So we will start with our triggers, and then we will go into the summary of chapter 18, and then we will read chapter 19. So let's get right into it with setting our intention. Okay. Oh, there we go. So, tonight we set the intention that this reading will accomplish the greatest and highest good for all. Okay, I'm going to set our Himalayan sea salt candle holder to the side, right there. Okay, and then now we are going to clear our space. Okay, so now we're gonna light our sage for some more space clearing. Look at that, isn't that gorgeous? Okay, so let's go ahead and clear our space. Clear our space. Cleansing and clearing. Cleansing and clearing. Cleansing and clearing. There it is. Okay. And is it that in the abalone seashell? Alright. 3 days earlier, Hawkeye, Hayward, Uncas, Chingachgook, and Gamut come out of the forest and see death and destruction all around. Shocked and horrified at the scene, they look everywhere for the girls and can't find them until Uncas finds a piece of Cora's riding veil, and then they are led by other signs to where Magua took Alice on a horse, and Cora and Gamut rode after them. Hayward wants to go after them immediately, but was advised by Hawkeye to take some time to think things through and spend the night in the damaged fort. So that is where we're picking up in chapter 19. So let's get right into it. Salar, why, I am sure, if he forfeit, thou wilt not take his flesh. What's that good for? Shy, to bait fish withal. If it will feed nothing else, it will feed my revenge. That was from a quote from Merchant of Venice. And this apparently is a dialogue between two characters. Okay, so it sounds like he's saying that, well, if that person gives up, or if the enemy gives up, surely you'll just, like, not try to kill him or take his flesh. What's that good for? And he's saying that, well, to bait fish it withal, it will, if anything, getting back at this person, even if they gave up, will feed their revenge. And that's from The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare. Okay, so moving on. Alright, chapter 19. The shades of evening had come to increase the dreariness of the place when the party entered the ruins of William Henry. The scout and his companions immediately made their preparations to pass the night there, but with an earnestness and sobriety of demeanor that betrayed how much the unusual horrors they had just witnessed worked on their practiced feelings. A few fragments of rafters were reared against a blackened wall, and when Uncas had covered them slightly with brush, the temporary accommodations were deemed sufficient. The young native pointed toward his rude hut when his labor was ended, and Hayward, who understood the meaning of the silent gestures, gently urged Monroe to enter. Leaving the bereaved old man alone with his sorrows, Duncan immediately returned into the open air, too much excited himself to seek the repose he had recommended to his veteran friend, while Hawkeye and the natives lighted their fire and took their evening's repast, a frugal meal of dried bear's meat. The young man paid a visit to the curtain of the dilapidated fort, which looked out on the street of the Hurricane. The wind had fallen, and the waves were already rolling on the sandy beach beneath him in a more regular and tempered succession. The clouds, as if tired of their furious chase, were breaking asunder, the heavier volumes gathering in black masses about the horizon, while the lighter scud still hurried above the water, or eddied among the tops of the mountains like broken flights of birds hovering around their roosts. placed himself in an attitude of intense attention and listened long and keenly for a repetition of the low sound that had so unexpectedly startled him. His vigilance, however, seemed excited in vain, for after a fruitless pause he whispered to Duncan, "We must give a call to Uncas. The boy has native senses and may hear what is hid from us. For being a white skin, I will not deny my nature." The young Mohican, who was conversing in a low voice with his father, started as he heard the moaning of an owl, and springing to his feet, he looked toward the black mounds as if seeking the place where the sounds proceeded. The scout repeated the call, and in a few moments Duncan saw the figure of Uncas stealing cautiously along the rampart of the spot where they stood. Hawkeye explained his wishes in very few words, which were spoken in the Delaware tongue. So soon as Uncas was in possession of the reason why he was summoned, he threw himself flat on the turf, where to the eyes of Duncan he reappeared to lie quiet and motionless, surprised at the immovable attitude of the young warrior, and curious to observe the manner in which he employed his faculties to obtain the desired information. Hayward advanced a few steps and bent over the dark object on which he had kept his eye riveted. Then it was discovered that the form of Uncas vanished, and that he beheld only the dark outline of an inequality in the embankment. "What has become of the Mohican?" he demanded of the scout, stepping back in amazement. "It was here that I saw him fall, and could have sworn that here he yet remained." "Speak lower, for we know not what ears are open, and the Mingos are a quick-witted breed. As for Uncas, he is out on the plain, and the Maquas, if any such about us, will find their equal." So basically, saying Uncas has got this. Okay, you think that Montcalm has not called off all his natives? Let us give the alarm to our companions that we may stand to our arms. Here are 5 of us who are not unused to meet an enemy. Not a word to either, as you value your life. Look at the Sagamore. How like a grand native chief he sits by the fire. If there are any scholars out in the darkness, they will never discover by his countenance that we suspect danger at hand. But they may discover him, and it will prove his death. His person can be too plainly seen by the light of that fire, and he will become the first and most certain victim. It is undeniable that now you speak the truth," returned the scout, betraying more anxiety than was usual. "Yet what can be done? A single suspicious look might bring on an attack before we are ready to receive it. He knows by the call I gave to Uncas that we have struck a scent. I will tell him that we are on the trail of the Mingos. His native nature will teach him how to act." The scout applied his fingers to his mouth and raised a low, hissing sound that caused Duncan at first to start aside, believing that he had heard a serpent. The head of Chingachgook was resting on a hand as he sat musing by himself, but the moment he had heard the warning of the animal whose name he bore, he arose to an upright position, and his dark eyes glanced swiftly and keenly on every side of him. With this sudden and perhaps involuntary movement, every appearance of surprise or alarm ended. His rifle lay untouched and apparently unnoticed within reach of his hand. The tomahawk that he had loosened in his belt for the sake of ease was even suffered to fall from its usual situation to the ground, and his form seemed to sink like that of a man whose nerves and sinews were suffered to relax for the purpose of rest. Cunningly resuming his former position, though with a change of hands, as if the movement had been merely to relieve the limb, the native awaited the result with a calmness and fortitude that none but a native warrior would have known how to exercise. But Hayward saw that while to a less instructed eye the Mohican Uncas just then reappeared within the circle of light into the bosom of the work. How is it, Sagamore? Are the Mingos upon us in earnest, or is it only one of those reptiles who hang upon the skirts of a war party to scalp the dead, go in and make their boast among the squaws of the valiant deeds done on the palefaces? Chingachgook very quietly resumed his seat, nor did he make any reply until after he had examined the firebrand which had been struck by the bullet that had nearly proved fatal to himself, after which he was content to reply, holding a single finger up to view with the English monosyllable, 1. I thought as much, returned Hawkeye, seating himself, and as he had got to the cover of the lake before Uncas pulled upon him, it is more than probable the knave will sing his lies about some great ambushment in which he was outlying on the trail of 2 Mohicans and a white hunter, for the officers can be considered as little better than idlers in such a scrimmage. Well, let him. There are always some honest men in every nation, though heaven knows, too, that they are scarce among the Maquas, to look down and upstart when he brags again in the face of reason. The varlet sent his lead within whistle of your ear, Sagamore. Chingachgook turned a calm and incurious eye toward the place where the ball had struck, and then resumed his former attitude with a composure that could not be disturbed by so trifling an incident. Just then Uncas glided into the circle and seated himself in the fire with the same appearance of indifference as was maintained by his father. Of these several movements, Hayward was a deeply interested and wondering observer. It appeared to him as though the foresters had some secret means of intelligence which had escaped the vigilance of his own faculties. In place of that eager and garrulous narration with which a white youth would have endeavored to communicate and perhaps exaggerate that which had passed out in the darkness of the plain, the young warrior was seemingly content to let his deeds speak for themselves. It was in fact neither the moment nor the occasion for a native to boast of its exploits, and it is probable that Hayward neglected to inquire. Not another syllable would just then have been uttered on the subject. What has become of our enemy, Uncas? Demanded Duncan. We heard your rifle and hoped you had not fired in vain. The young chief removed a fold of his hunting skirt and quietly exposed the fatal tuft of hair which he bore as a symbol of victory. Chingachgook laid his hand on the scalp and considered it for a moment with deep attention, then dropping it with disgust depicted in his strong features, he ejaculated, Oneida! Oneida! Repeated the scout, who was fast losing his interest in the scene, in an apathy nearly assimilated to that of his red associates, but who now advanced in uncommon earnestness to regard the bloody badge. By the Lord, if the Oneidas are outlying upon the trail, we shall be flanked by devils on every side of us. Now, to white eyes, there is no difference between this bit of skin and that any other native, and yet the Sagamore declares it came from the bull of a Mingo. He even names the tribe of the poor devil with as much ease as if the scalp was the leaf of a book and each hair a letter. What right have Christian whites to boast of their learning when a savage can read a language that would prove too much for the wisest of them all? What say you, lad, of what people was the knave? Uncas raised his eyes to the face of the scout and answered in his soft voice, Oneida. Oneida again. When one native makes a declaration, it is commonly true, but when he is supported by his people, set it down as gospel. The poor fellow has mistaken us for French, said Hayward, or he would not have attempted the life of a friend. He mistake a Mohican in his paint for a Huron. You would be as likely to mistake the white-coated grenadiers of Montcalm for the scarlet jackets of the Royal Americans, returned the scout. No, the serpent knew his errand, nor was there any great mistake in the matter for No, the serpent knows his errand, nor was there any great mistake in the matter, for there is but little love between a Delaware and a Mingo. Let their tribes go out to fight for whom they may in a white quarrel. For that matter, though the Oneidas do serve majesty, who is my sovereign lord and master, I should not have deliberated long about letting off Kildare at the end myself, had luck thrown him in my way. That would have been an abuse of our treaties and unworthy of your character. That would have been an abuse of our treaties and unworthy of your character. When a man consorts with a people, continued Hawkeye, if they were honest and he is no knave, love will grow up atwixt them. It is true that white cunning has managed to throw the tribes into great confusion as respects friends and enemies, so that the Hurons and the Oneidas, who speak the same tongue, or what may be called the same, take each other's scalps, and the Delawares are divided among themselves, a few hanging about their great council fire on their own river, and fighting on the same side with the Mingos, while the greater part are in the Canadas, out of natural enmity to the Maquas, thus throwing everything into disorder and destroying all the harmony of warfare. Yet a red nature is not likely to alter with every shift of policy, so that the love betwixt a Mohican and a Mingo is much like the regard between a white man and a serpent. I regret to hear it, for I had believed those natives who dwelt within our boundaries had found us too just and liberal not to identify themselves fully with our quarrels. Why, I believe it is nature to give a preference to one's own quarrels before those of strangers. Now, for myself, I do love justice, and therefore I will not say I hate Mingo, for that may be unsuitable to my color and my religion, though I will just repeat, it may have been owing to the night that Kildare had no hand in the death of this Skull King Oneida. Then, as if satisfied with the force of his own reasons, whatever might be their effect on the opinions of the other disputant, the honest but implacable woodsman turned from the fire, content to let the controversy slumber. Hayward withdrew to the rampart, too uneasy and too little accustomed to the warfare of the woods to remain at ease under the possibility of such insidious attacks. Not so, however, with the scout and the Mohicans. Those acute and long-practiced senses whose powers so often exceed the limits of all ordinary credulity. After having detected the danger, had enabled them to ascertain its magnitude and duration, not one of the three appeared in the least to doubt their perfect security, as was indicated by the preparations that were soon made to sit in council over their future proceedings. The confusion of nations and even of tribes to which Hawkeye alluded existed at that period in the fullest force. The great tie of language and, of course, of a common origin was severed in many places, and it was one of its consequences that the Delaware and the Mingo, as the people of the Six Nations were called, were found fighting in the same ranks, while the latter sought the scalp of the Huron, though believed to be the root of his own stock. The Delawares were even divided among themselves, though love for the soil which had belonged to his ancestors kept the Sagamore of the Mohicans with a small band of followers who were serving at Edward under the banners of the English king, by far the largest portion of his nation, were known to be in the field as allies of Montcalm. The reader probably knows, if enough has not already been gleaned from his narrative, that the Delaware or Lenape claimed to be the progenitors of that numerous people, who once were masters of most of the eastern and northern states of America, of whom the community of the Mohicans a short and impressive pause, Chingachgook lighted a pipe, whose bowl was curiously carved in one of the soft stones of the country, and whose stem was a tube of wood, and commenced smoking. When he had inhaled enough of the fragrance of the soothing weed, he passed the instrument into the hands of the scout. In this manner the pipe had made its rounds several times, amid the most profound silence, before either of the party opened his lips. Then the Sagamore, as the oldest and highest in the rank, in a few calm and dignified words, proposed the subject for deliberation. He was answered by the scout, and Chingachgook rejoined when the other objected to his opinions. But the youthful Uncas continued a silent and respectful listener, until Hawkeye, in complacence, demanded his opinion. Hayward gathered from the manners of the different speakers that the father and son espoused one side of the disputed question, while the white man maintained the other. The contest gradually grew warmer, until it was quite evident the feelings of the speakers began to be somewhat enlisted in the debate. Notwithstanding the increasing warmth of the amicable contest, most decorous Christian assembly, not even excepting those in which its reverend ministers are collected, might have learned a wholesome lesson of moderation from the forbearance and courtesy of the disputants. The words of Uncas were received with the same deep attention as those which fell from the mature wisdom of his father, and so far from manifesting any impatience, neither spoke in reply until a few moments of silent meditation were seemingly bestowed in deliberating on what had already been said. The language of the Mohicans was accompanied by gestures so direct and natural that Hayward had but little difficulty in following the thread of their argument. On the other hand, the scout was obscure, because from the lingering pride of color he rather affected the cold and artificial manner which characterizes all classes of Anglo-Americans when unexcited. By the frequency with which the natives described the marks of a forest trail, it was evident they urged a pursuit by land, while the repeated sweep of Hawkeye's arm toward the Rican denoted that he was for a passage across his waters. The latter was to every appearance fast losing ground, and the point was about to be decided against him, when he rose to his feet, and shaking off his apathy, he suddenly assumed the manner of a native, and adopted all the arts of a native eloquence. Elevating an arm, he pointed out the track of the sun, repeating the gestures for every day that was necessary to accomplish their objects. Then he delineated a long and painful path amid rocks and watercourses. The age and weakness of the slumbering and unconscious Monroe were indicated by signs too palpable to be mistaken. Duncan perceived that even his own powers were spoken lightly of, as the scout extended his palm and mentioned him by the appellation of the Open Hand, a name his liberality had purchased of all the friendly tribes. Then came a representation of the light and graceful movements of a canoe, set in forcible contrast to the tottering steps of one enfeebled and tired. He concluded by pointing to the scalp of the Oneida, and apparently urging the necessity of their departing speedily and in a manner that should leave no trail. The Mohicans listened gravely and with countenances that reflected the sentiments of the speaker. Conviction gradually wrought its influence, and toward the close of Hawkeye's speech, his sentences were accompanied by the customary exclamation of commendation. In short, Uncas and his father became converts to his way of thinking, abandoning their own previously expressed opinions with the liberality and candor that, had they been the representatives of some great and civilized